The Arc Raiders playtest slash server slam, whatever they called it, has came to an end. My friend group, likely like yours, was completely taken over by Arc Raiders this past weekend, and for good reason. That shit bangs. Last weekend, I was locked completely into Arc Raiders, and today I just kind of want to yap about it. Here's the gameplay in the background, because that playtest was some of the most fun I've had with a multiplayer-focused game in quite some time. I don't even have points written down. I'm just going to yap off the dome on what I like about the game. But I guess if you somehow are watching this and don't know what Arc Raiders is, a third-person extraction shooter, PvPvE, kind of in a similar vein of Hunt Showdown if you played something like that from the jump. I'm not like an extraction shooter guy, but I have put a fair amount of time into Hunt Showdown. And Hunt Showdown is probably, honestly, one of my favorite games of all time. It's so unique, and Arc Raiders successfully scratches the itch that I get while playing Hunt Showdown, which no other game has really done for me before. And I'll probably bring up Hunt a few times just to compare it because it's kind of the closest thing. But if you played Hunt and you like Hunt, chances are you're going to like Arc Raiders. Now again, like I said, Arc Raiders is PvPvE, so when you drop into a game with either yourself or with up to 2 other friends in the trios, now you take your loadout in, whether it's one you created with loot you've got from the games or a free loadout because maybe you've been getting dicked on and just got to go in and get some resources. You go in with your loadout with your team and you are put into the map with a bunch of other teams. The goal is just to loot up and get out with as much loot as possible. And you loot up by, of course, fighting other teams, looting areas that have varying degrees of loot rarity, as well as fighting the Ark, which are basically like mecha robot things that are roaming around the map. Most of them are like flying drones, but there's also a couple different like spider drone style of things. And I'm sure there's going to be even more once the full game releases on the 30th. But these are just a few of the ones that we got to fight here in the server slam, I believe they called this playtest. Going into this game, I wasn't really expecting much. I knew about it and had it like wishlisted because I just wanted to try it, but I wasn't super hype about it like a lot of people were. And admittedly, for like the first 2 hours of me playing, I was kind of just like, okay, this is just another extraction shooter. Like, cool, it does look visually very good, but it didn't really grab me until I sort of understood, I guess, the loop of the game. And then I was pretty much hooked from there on. And so hooked, in fact, after the first day of me playing, I downloaded it Saturday morning. I literally, me and 2 of my friends sat and played this game for like 14 hours straight for the entire day, this is the first time I've done that with a game in a really long time, honestly, which these are probably baby numbers for some of you, but I'm a full-grown adult that has a job, so I can't really tend to do that anymore. And even with games that I do really like, especially PvP games, I tend to play them for a couple hours and I go take a break. Play them for a couple hours, I take a break. This game, other than like eating and going to the bathroom, we were just grinding. I have 20 hours exact. So over 2 days, because it came out Friday night technically, but I didn't play it till Sunday morning. So over 2 days, I spent almost one whole day just bussing down on Arc Raiders, dude. It was so much fun. But let's talk about what's kind of unique to the game. So the gunplay, again, is third person. And it honestly reminds me a lot of something like The Division. And I've always liked the gunplay in The Division. Although there's no like cover system like The Division. You're not like snapping to cover. It's sort of more free flow. The general step-by-step of how a game would go. Again, there's footage here in the background. You load in, you'll loot up just around your spawn, or you'll choose sort of a destination. There's a bunch of different areas on the map that have different varying degrees of loot. So a lot of the times, especially once we got used to it, me and my friends would just beeline the control tower because it was a high tier loot area, and basically every team would just converge there and start fighting. So yeah, you'd either loot up or just head straight to a high loot area, fight people, loot up, and then there's these elevators spread throughout the map that you have to call them in and wait for them to come up, which takes like a whole minute. Doors have to open. And once you get in there, you type into the computer, which takes like 10 seconds for the doors to come back up. So it's a whole fight pretty much from spawn in to end to get the loot and then get out with the loot. Typical extraction shooter stuff. The thing I like about this game that I think it does pretty well versus other extraction shooters is it doesn't feel super high stakes, but also there is a lot of tension because you don't want to, obviously you're going to lose what you have on you if you die, but the risk doesn't feel like super catastrophic, at least in this playtest. Maybe it's just because in the playtest the loot we have is limited, so it was pretty easy to just rebuild the same kit that you went in with. So that could change later on, but I really just enjoyed the loop of this game and how fast-paced it was, especially compared to something like Tarkov, which is a lot more slow and methodical. This is more just like run straight in, fight, get the fuck out, right? I touched on this a little bit, but again, the game graphically is beautiful. I played it pretty much on almost the default settings that it came with on my computer, although I did turn down the ray tracing because I had ray tracing on by default, which is another thing, the optimization on this game. It ran like butter on my computer the entire time. Even for like the first like maybe 10 hours of me playing, I was just playing with ray tracing on without even knowing it was on because it just defaults to that. But at no point were my like frames dropping or anything to the point where I was like, hey, maybe I should look at the settings and turn them down, until I just randomly looked at them just to see and saw that ray tracing was turned on to like high quality off the rip. Pretty much my entire friend group had no problems playing this game, and we all have, you know, varying tiers of computer. So throughout this playtest, I didn't really have any like server lag issues, nothing crazy. Obviously every game's gonna lag, but the game overall from a performance standpoint was super solid, and I'm sure whatever, you know, little issues they found throughout this playtest will be fixed by the time that the game comes out at the end of this month. And I feel like I started having the most fun when I started like learning the map in my head. And maybe this was because we only had access to the one map, with this being the playtest. Once I started learning, like, number one, where the high tier loot is and how to get into these higher tier loot areas, because some of them you need like a key to get in, or a key card to get in, or just like take a weird path to get into something. Around the map, there's depots that are always in the same spot, and you could find like these energy battery cubes to pick up around the map and put into them to get loot. So once I sort of like internally started recognizing like spawn points for where these batteries would be and sort of rotate between, and then I know, okay, there might be battery right here, there's a depot right there, so that's some easy fresh loot, you know, hot off a spawn, because a lot of the spawns were kind of by these depots. And just learning the game was a very fulfilling thing, and it felt fairly easy to learn, especially in comparison to something like Hunt Showdown or Tarkov, but not like baby mode easy, where I saw a lot of people who played the marathon playtest were kind of like, this is like over trivializing a lot of the stuff. There's still quite a bit to figure out with the progression in this game, especially when you're out of the match and you have to like grind for materials, and there's a bunch of different workstations that you craft pretty much at your base when you're not in game. You know, there's like a gunsmith station where you're building up your guns, building attachments for your guns, medical station. There's a bunch more stations that we, again, didn't have access to because this was a playtest. And that's another big thing that I should probably just say. How much fun I had with this playtest, with how little content available within this test. So I can't even imagine once the game, you know, is opened up all the way, just how much more progression there is to grind through, and just how much more variance there'll be in builds, because I think there's only like 5 or 6 guns that you could actually like craft in your base, and then maybe 2 or 3 that you could find like as loot out in the map. So once that's opened up even more, I'm sure the economy of the game, and again, maybe that like high stakes thing will be amplified more, because you get some really crazy legendary weapon or something. I did find one legendary throughout this, but it was like an augment for the anvil, which is like a hand cannon. It definitely made a difference. So I'm sure the high tier loot is going to be really crazy, and something you're not going to want to lose. Another big plus for me for this game that I'm sort of thinking of now was the balance of the game. Again, this could just be a playtest thing because everyone's kind of using the same weapons, because the weapon pool was very limited in this playtest. But even like when you'd find like the Osprey or the Renegade, which are 2 rare snipers that you could only find in game and like looting, you can't just build them. Even finding things like that, it didn't feel like you just get completely like outgunned by them. You could still easily win a fight against somebody that had a higher tier gun than you. It didn't feel like people with higher tier loot were just going to win fights just because they had a higher tier gun than you, even if, you know, you're actually playing good and hitting your shots, but you just lose anyway because you have a lower tier weapon. I didn't really see that happen at all. Again, that could change once You know, the loot pool opens up when full game releases and all that, but that was a pretty big plus for me in this, is that I could even go in with like a free loadout and still put in work against players that had their, fully kitted stuff. I also am a big fan of the map design. Again, we only had one map in this test, so maybe the other maps are some shitters, but the map that we did get to play, I feel like had a very good variance of just like elevation and the way that the map kind of flowed together. It was not super difficult to get from, A to B if you were trying to even run all the way across the map. But it's also far enough to where, the map is big enough that it's not necessarily what you want to do if that high tier loot is all the way on the other map. Maybe you just make that decision, hey, maybe let's just get resources here this run, dip out, and then requeue, and maybe we'll spawn, closer to a high tier area. But if you really did want to book it all the way over there, you definitely could. And there'd probably still be people there fighting who maybe already looted it up for you, so then you could just take that fight and get the loot off of them. Typical extraction shooter stuff, right? One weird thing about the game that I don't really know if it's positive or negative, it's just kind of odd to me, is that players will get added to the lobby in the middle of the game too. I think there's a timer for each match. I think it's 30 minutes. There were a couple games where me and my friends would get put into the game at like the 20 or 15 minute mark, like the halfway minute mark. And I don't really know what dictates that. I don't know if it's just like if way too many players extract or just die at the beginning of the game, then they dump in some more players. I'm also not sure exactly how many players there are in total in a match. So I don't know if it's just like 12 players at the beginning of the game and then maybe another set of 12 in the middle of the game. Not sure how that works. I didn't really feel like I was ever at that big of a disadvantage coming in at the middle of the game, again, because the balance was so good. But there was a game where we got put in the middle, and then at our spawn, everything was already looted. So it was like, why did we get put into this game? I'd rather get put in at the beginning of the game, obviously. Not a huge negative. It was just kind of weird, and I don't know why they do that, especially being that they had so many players on the playtest, like just fill in lobbies from the beginning. But again, maybe it's just because everybody died or whatever, and there was like one team left that was just going to run around the whole map for 20 minutes. I'm realizing now I've just been talking about the PvP the whole time. I should probably talk about the PvE a little bit. Fighting against the Ark, the bots, is mostly pretty simple. A lot of them are drones, which you can, the weak ones you can just kind of take out pretty easily. You do need like heavy bullets in order to be able to damage some of the heavier drones. And Ark in general, just the heavier robots, you need heavy bullets to be able to penetrate their armor. And I really, really liked, I haven't seen anyone else talk about this either, the physics on the drones, because you'd shoot out, they'd have like 4 rotors, you'd shoot out one of them, and you'd see the drone in the air just like wobble and sort of try to recalibrate itself. And sometimes if they got close enough to the ground, you could just shoot one of their propellers, and it would just explode by hitting the ground, which normally, if they're really high up, you'd have to shoot like all of them out or just blow it up entirely. So I really like the physics on the drones. It's just like satisfying to look at and impressive. However, there was one drone in particular that they need to nerf, and it's the damn Rocketeer, bro. The Rocketeer, we have lost more fights to the Rocketeer than players throughout this playtest. Guaranteed. Like, if you don't have full shield, full health, the Rocketeer will one-shot you. Guaranteed. Every time. Now, maybe this is a case of, like, once, again, the loot pool opens up and you can get higher tier guns, it's easier to kill. But it just soaked so many bullets and would just one-shot your entire team. And the aggro range on kind of all the drones is insane. They will chase you so far across the map. And at least I think how it works. You have to like break line of sight with the drones in order for them to sort of unaggro from you. But they're drones and you're out in the middle of the woods, so they're just flying over you no matter where you're going. So unless you're like by a building, it's basically impossible to break LOS with them, so you have to kill them. Or if it's a heavily armored one or a Rocketeer, you just basically straight up die. I think they just need to tune it a little bit. I don't think it's crazy. The Rocketeer is the main one, but there were more fights than I'd like that I lost because of the drones, like kind of interrupting a PvP fight that I really didn't like, especially at the top of the control tower. Why are drones hovering around outside of windows 20 stories up in the air just to shoot me through a window as I'm fighting other teams for the highest tier loot area in the game? Like, the PvP is enough in that situation. I don't know if the drone's just like aggroed all the way up there from the ground or what, but I just think it needs to be tuned. The PvP, should be the main threat. I don't think Arc should be like super crazy thing you have to worry about. Obviously, it should do damage to you, but it shouldn't. Mainly the Rocketeer should not be one-shotting me if I don't have max health, max shield. Because even if you have full health but no shield, you are getting one-tapped by that shit. You could have full health, half shield, one-tap, guarantee. And it's not easy to dodge either. It just locks straight onto you, and I don't know. They need to tune the Rocketeer, man. That's all I gotta say. There's other, spidery mix. The small spiders are really easy to kill. Pretty much one-shot them with almost any gun. Fireball, sort of rolling ball, Roomba guys, also fine. There are big-ass leapers, I think they're called. Kind of enormous spider drones that are super tanky and hard to kill. But they honestly don't really... But I don't really have a problem with those because they don't kill you super quick. They're just like a hard fight. I do kind of wish there was more of an incentive to fight them. That's one thing I think maybe I'll take from Hunt Showdown is, and maybe they will do this with more maps and stuff when the full game comes out, is have sort of a like mini boss or something to compete against other teams with to get. In the same way as in Hunt Showdown, you have to compete for the bounties that are on the map. I think that would be cool and actually give you an incentive to fight these bigger arc machines, because basically when you see a Rocketeer or a Leaper in the game, you just do everything you can to avoid it, because if you try fighting it, your whole team might just get wiped without even seeing other players just by this random ass robot. And even if you do kill them, like me and my friends did end up killing one of the Leapers, and the loot was pretty lackluster. I mean, it was like rare materials to make other guns. Maybe it is worthwhile again once the full game comes out, so you can actually make those higher tier guns. But in this playtest, at least, a lot of the stuff was kind of useless. I feel like I've idly yapped about this enough. Clearly, I like the game. I'm very much looking forward to it. I think it's got potential. It seems like a lot of people are hype about it, which is good. And yeah, it's just haven't had that much fun on a PvP focused game, especially shooter game, in quite some time. I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on the server slam. Yeah, if you tried out Arc Raiders throughout this weekend, let me know what you guys think, and if I missed any points that you think are good or bad for the game, or any feedback, I'd be willing to hear it. Also, let me know if you like these yap style videos instead of just raw gameplay like I've been doing. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one.